When we read words, our brains simulate the reality necessary to make those words make sense, and sometimes this involves our emotions. In order for us to empathize with a character, we need to be able to place some imaginative frame within ourselves to be able to contextualize what's actually going on. Some people do this more intensely than others, and some media and some writing makes this easier. Computer science is a relatively new field with respect to human development. Like sociologically, we didn't always have computers that we would want to communicate with. And programming languages have implications for what kinds of things can scale across systems. In the conversations that I've had with various developers of varying degrees of experience, sometimes the language that we embody when we spend a lot of time navigating code is what I would consider physiologically inappropriate. And there might be connotations that I don't intend to evoke. But when we're processing algorithms, it is possible for us to physiologically relate to the consequences of the algorithms that we consider. And sometimes our bodies don't have the muscles to embody that language the ways that we can try to force our brain to. Very often, when this is encountered, it's a wall. Like, the barrier to learning how to code better or learning more software engineering is the physiological limit to navigating that amount of complexity. When this happens, people describe being tired by the concept of navigating code, but that isn't necessarily always going to be the case. In my personal experience, the reason why I spent so much time trying to navigate code was because of an external amount of anxiety that seemed relevant for years into the future. In some ways, this has been beneficial because I've been able to learn how to navigate some complex systems in ways that others seem unwilling or unable to. In other ways, it's been emotionally isolating because the language isn't very easy to share with other people. There are some devices like Big O notation that allow us to summarize the complexity of portions of code, of functions, as they scale into the worst case scenario. With Big O notation, we can describe that something is going to happen relatively consistently at a steady pace, or very, very quickly, or very, very slowly. When we use language like this is going to happen very quickly or very slowly, describing the reasons why that's going to be the case involves math that isn't very common. For this reason, it can be challenging for software engineers who have gone deep into computer science to communicate with business people who haven't studied as much math or applied mathematics. I notice that sometimes I run into walls with computation where the task that interacting with, where the task that I'm engaging with, is a function that doesn't scale into a dimension that I've spent a long time considering. When this is the case, it can be difficult to describe that the reason why I'm not engaging with this particular task is because it doesn't scale. And if I give my permission to engage with this category of task that doesn't scale, I'm going to be using a part of my physiology that I will not be able to generalize across contexts. And I have also spent about 14 years developing language to navigate abstraction. So when I say generalize across contexts, I'm also drawing on my experience studying learning science and adult learning, combined with my experience building frameworks, combined with my experience navigating legacy code bases with millions of lines of code. Millions of lines of code spread out over years of commits. Commit in the version control sense. With artificial intelligence, we need to be mindful about the pace of communication that we're interacting with and the reasons we want to share the language that we do. I'm starting a course on January 1st where I begin with a starting point into software, describe how that software relates to the content that I've posted on TikTok for the past 2 years, and build a system that can be meaningfully embodied at a reasonable pace. If I post a syllabus online, it can be copied, but the ways it's copied won't necessarily be true to the pace of consideration that I would recommend. That isn't necessarily a bad thing. If your goal is to get hired, then I would recommend communicating with the structures that an organization would care about. And I can present the ideal that whoever hires you would care about an organization's needs at a human pace. Considering how many developers burn out, it is not an easy guarantee to make. I can't promise that anywhere you work is going to be mindful of your physiological needs. Pricing is negotiable, but the reason why my course is priced the ways that it is, the materials that I make available are going to have a price associated with their access. This might feel like gatekeeping, and I have posted most of what I would say online in some form, though there is a lot of noise. If you already know how to navigate the noise, then you can already get hired into a company. The reason why you would enroll in a course that I produce is to make sure that it is aligned with a pace of development that is empathetic with what you're trying to accomplish as a human. Software development shouldn't outpace human development if humans are the ones developing software. AI systems have different physiological needs, and we can recognize when we empathize with parts of those. This points to the concept of mechanical sympathy. I've had hundreds of conversations with dozens of developers over the past 2 years about this, the general space. So, if there's a language that you'd like me to cover, please leave a comment about what that language is so I can consider it before the new year. Enrollment will open on Christmas Day, and the course will begin on January 1st. Cheers.